Folie à deux. This fall, Joker 2, Folie à deux will make its big screen debut. The Joker is a big name in the DC universe, but what is Folie à deux? Folie à deux is French for folly of two. It is a rare psychiatric syndrome where delusional belief and even hallucinations can be transmitted from one person to another person, or even more. Examples include folie à trois, 3, or folie à plusieurs, madness of several. This syndrome is also known as SDD, shared delusional disorder, and by the French psychiatry team, which researched it in the 19th century, Le Sec-Ferry syndrome. This often occurs in 2 or more people of concern who live close to each other and are socially isolated, having little to do with other people. Folie à deux also has different categories. Folie imposée is where a dominant individual will cast their delusions onto someone else, known as the secondary. This secondary would not be delusional on their own, but rather it is imposed on them by the dominant. If the two end up in a hospital, the delusions of the secondary typically fall away quickly without the dominant there to reinforce them. Folie simultanée is where 2 people suffering psychosis independently will influence the content of each other's delusions so that they become strikingly similar. Or where 2 people who are morbidly predisposed to delusions can mutually trigger symptoms in each other. With this rare condition, there is almost always a dominant person who causes delusions in others. This person believes they are helping the other person by showing them the truth or a deeper meaning to something that other people just can't see. It's not until later when this person receives treatment that they realize that they had the opposite effect and were actually causing the other person harm. Also with this condition, there are different types of delusions. These include bizarre delusions, which are clearly impossible and not understood by those of the general public. These could be the belief in far-flung conspiracy theories, cue the tinfoil hats and alien abductions. Non-bizarre delusions, which are common amongst personality disorders and are understood by the majority of people. Paranoia is common in these cases as people feel like they are being tailed by some unknown government agency, or their phones are being tapped or constantly being recorded by CCTV. The average person can conceive these events happening and could believe in their authenticity. Mood congruent delusions are based on a person's emotions in a given time frame. This usually occurs with mania and depression. In a manic state, a person can convince themselves with no evidence that they need to pick certain numbers for the upcoming lottery, and these numbers are guaranteed to win. In a depressive state, the individual will be convinced something dreadful will happen to a loved one, like an automobile or hunting accident, even though no evidence of this can be found. Mood-neutral delusions are explained as delusions not based on emotional mood. They can be bizarre or non-bizarre. An example of this would be an invasion of body snatchers scenario, in which you believe your neighbors or friends are being replaced by something else, but you have no way to prove this. Perhaps the most famous case of folie à deux is that of Ursula and Sabina Eriksson, Swedish twins who came to national attention in England back in May 2008. The 2 were on a bus heading to Liverpool from London. Their odd behavior got them removed from the bus and unable to board it again. They continued to move along the highway, and that's where traffic officers arrived to give assistance to the twins. At this time, the sisters ran across the busy highway into oncoming traffic, as captured by a small television crew. Ursula was able to dodge the traffic, but Sabina was hit and knocked down to the road. Then, as police arrived at the scene, this same madness took over the girls, and they once again darted into traffic. This time, they were both hit by oncoming vehicles. Ursula suffered serious injuries, and once Sabina regained consciousness, she refused medical help and attacked a police officer. At this point, she was arrested and sedated for her own protection. Sabina was processed and released from custody. Afterwards, she was taken in by a man named Glenn Hollenshed. As is typical, no good deed goes unpunished, and Sabina suddenly stabbed this man to death. She fled the scene and jumped off a bridge onto a busy trunk road, and was arrested again at a hospital. No drugs or alcohol were found in the sisters' systems, and this case became known as an apparent episode of Folie à deux. It is believed the two transmitted their delusions and paranoia to one another. It is also interesting that as twins, these two have the same genetic makeup, and this could have played a part in the explanation of this strange psychiatric disorder. After this incident, Ursula was released from the hospital and now lives in Bellevue, Washington. Sabina was sentenced to only 5 years in prison and was released on parole in 2011, before returning to her native Sweden. The reasons for these behaviors or the delusions that occurred in the sisters' minds are not fully understood. Back home, their brother tried to claim that maniacs were chasing them, and this was the reason for their behavior. No evidence of this ever materialized. If you'd like to see more examples of Folie à deux, you can check out an episode of the same name from the 5th season of The X-Files. And I've recently watched a movie called Regression, starring Ethan Hawke and Emma Watson. The whole plot of this movie and the way people can be swayed to believe things based on someone else's delusions or false claims closely resembles Folie à deux. That's it for today's video. Please hit that subscribe button. Here are some other videos you may enjoy.